Mark Walsh here from Embodied Yoga Principles. This is a video on yoga for grief. So if you're watching this, maybe you're a teacher that wants to help grieving students or you're in grief yourself. So just to set the frame, we're not going to do psychotherapy here. So I'm not qualified, you probably aren't either. To set the frame as grief as a normal process of life celebration and letting go when someone you love has died. This has been relevant for me recently. So about a couple of months ago, I lost my dad and also a close friend. So I've been to a couple of funerals in the last couple of months. What I have found is my yoga practice has been very, very helpful in that period. And I wanted to share this. I think it could be helpful for other people too. And I'm not sure if this is a time, you know, I'd certainly used to think, you go to yoga when you feel good or when you're stressed maybe, to be unstressed. And if I was sad or if I was grieving, I'd just sit at home. You know, I wouldn't see the point in a yoga class. I certainly see the point of being more private in your practice, and I generally have been only going to classes where I felt like two things. One, it was a pretty relaxed, gentle class, that's the first thing I'd say. Secondly, where I know the teacher would respect it if I needed a rest. So grieving, I'm a psychologist as well, grieving as a process is fairly well documented, you know, Kubler-Ross's stages and things like this. All of those stages can be helped through yoga practice if you use it intelligently. The main one for me has been practices around letting go. So obviously grief, you're letting go of someone, right? The main practices I was using for that, anything kind of yin, but for example, the classic letting go posture from EYP, standing forwards bend, or that kind of soft out breath yin. Super helpful. You know, you can do this in a chair, there's other ways to do this, but that letting go of the head, you know, it's beyond your control when someone dies, yeah? So that's a classic. Any forward bends, this is in ancient yoga sutras and stuff, actually, it's not new. Child pose, particularly poignant if it's a parent you've lost, but child pose for me was that sense of surrender. We call this surrender pose in EYP. In this posture, you can do it here with the arms behind. There's this sense of just putting your head to the ground and saying, you know what, I give up, I surrender. This has happened, it's bad and it has happened. There's a sort of admitting, not defeating yourself, but admitting that this difficult thing has happened. And feeling the ground. I mean, for me, the ground generally, any postures where I'm feeling the ground, there's this nice sense of solidity and support. One of the things grief can do is give you a sense that kind of the mat or the rug of life has been come underneath you. Coming to the ground, feeling the ground is super helpful. It could be Shavasana. There's a posture I really like, what you call rest posture. They use in Alexander technique and Feldenkrais, so you do it with the hands behind the head or a block. And in this position, just being really aware of the ground, feeling that solidity, and just getting rest, you know? Like one of the main things about grief is it really tires you. I mean, I've spent a lot of the last 2 months just more tired than normal, and respecting that, feeling the body and going, you know what, I do not have the energy to do a 9 to 5 today. Which surprised me, right? I was like, oh, okay, you know, because I'd lost people before, but this is the first time I think respected that urge to turn the lights off, wear dark clothes, to go in. You know, in some religious traditions, for example, in Judaism, they cover all the mirrors so that you can go into yourself and really feel and acknowledge the difficulty of the loss and be present with the difficult emotions so they can move and motion, transform. So lots of rest. In classes, I'm taking lots of rests rather than doing all the energetic ones. Going into that yin side with the forward bends, the out breath of letting go. So that's the biggest part of it for me. I'd say there is one more part, which is that sometimes in the grieving process, as adults, you know, my sister, for example, has children to look after. I have a job to do. There are times I was like, you know, I'm contracted to go to this client and I'm going to lose a hell of a lot of money if I don't. And you know what? Just for today, I'm going to get my shit together. And that's where I think the centering and the more yang postures are really helpful. So yes, we're mostly going with the flow of grief. And then sometimes saying, you know what? A classic one for me was I did a eulogy at my dad's funeral. And I really wanted to do a good job of it. And I talked to all the family and I'd done my notes and I'm used to public speaking, so I was thinking, okay, I can probably handle this, you know, that's my job. And it was hard, and halfway through I just stopped. I stood in mountain posture because I'd kind of collapsed, and I centered myself and I went, you know what, 5 minutes, you're going to do this, you're going to do a good job. be a man, and not in the macho sense, but in the mature sense. And then afterwards, you can go back to your forwards bending. So that's where I think sometimes doing the rigorous practice is important in order to expand so you don't collapse so much, you know, because there's a time for grieving and rolling in, but there's a time to actually say, you know what, right now I'm going to hold it together. And that's where the big expansive postures come in, like taking up space or warrior posture, if you know those. And they're also really good for the anger that can come with grief. So, yep, there's the denial, and the first thing is the tuning in to, okay, what's the basic reality of my emotion, which matches the basic reality of what's happened. There's the sadness, the grief, the acceptance, the letting go, but there's also the anger, and I think that a really strong practice with lots of planks, and I was doing some body weight exercises. It didn't last long, most of it was tiredness, but that, for me, can also be very helpful as well, doing some of that kind of strong practice to let the anger burn off a little bit. So yeah, you know, if you're going through grief, if you're watching this because you're grieving, then I wish you well. It's part of the human condition. You know, it is a process, and yeah, I hope some of this was in some small way helpful to you. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you can subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. More importantly, however, get the newsletter. So the newsletter you do, is that right? In the box here? Okay. So why you would want the newsletter, so you hear about the best videos, so you actually ask me questions, you can reply to the newsletter, I'll reply. You can hear about events, teacher trainings, other things that are happening, and stay in touch more reliably. So newsletter there.